Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Deku married Mitsuki Katsuki part 6. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. And also go support the TALESPINNER69 for writing that awesome fanfic. Let's start this video. For his outfit, it seemed to be casual wear for the most part and more at home when worn by a teenage boy, a baggy long-sleeved light grey shirt under a similarly baggy tannish t-shirt with a logo of a popular name brand root beer over the area of the chest, a pair of light tannish cargo pants held up with a simple black leather belt and a pair of light grey, somewhat clunky looking sneakers with black lightning bolt stripes on the outer sides. He also wore a few minor pieces of jewelry here and there, simple accessories that would suit a man very well. A plain black metal band ring on his right ring finger, a men's chain bracelet on his left wrist, a simple men's chain necklace around his neck, and simple grey metal stud earrings, one in each earlobe. Although the Japanese man was very clearly an adult, he clearly had the look of a young adult, what with how he dressed and accessorized. The average passerby would have estimated this Japanese man to be no older than 20. So, as one could imagine, said average passerby would be very much surprised when the Japanese man would inform them that he is, in fact, 42 years of age. The Japanese man was currently finishing up his light breakfast at the diner, a cozy place that was called Eat Diner Coffee Shop. His breakfast was a simple plain bagel with strawberry-flavored cream cheese spread and a moderately big mug of coffee, hazelnut-flavored and with hazelnut-flavored creamer. The man had to keep his first meal of the day light for a variety of reasons, one of which he was taking care of as he spoke on his cell phone. "You know, Nezu," the man said as he spoke into the phone, "I'm quite surprised that you're the contact that I have with the boss. I was told that you would be having your hands rather full in running UA, but I suppose that I shouldn't be all that surprised. After all, you are bar none the most intelligent person that I'm familiar with. The boss must see that too, hence why she thought that bringing you on in the capacity of expert consultant on the case that we're working must have been a very good idea. Her organization is keen on stopping the group of world-renowned expert thieves that you have secretly infiltrated." Hisashi, the familiar voice of Nezu, the principal of UA High School which is located over in Japan, replied from the other end, "Although while we're on the subject, are you sure it's wise to talk to me over the phone about this information, especially since you told me that you're in a public location?" But the self-amused chuckle, the Japanese man in the diner, revealed to be named Hisashi, simply replied, "The cell phone I'm using is unhackable, so no one can listen in on our talk by trying to hack my phone. Also, we're both speaking Japanese, a language that I'm the only one in this area can't speak and understand fluently. None of the people in the thieves group that I infiltrated can speak any language other than English, so even if any of them were listening to the two of us, they'd have no idea what we were even saying." "Ah, that's an excellent point," the quirked animal replied in an understanding tone. After a few brief instants of silence, Nezu said, "Oh, remember when we last spoke and I told you that UA had that tournament against Vulcan High? How could I forget?" Hisashi remarked, "You told me that my son Izuku was one of the UA students who was chosen to represent your school." "And represent UA he did," Nezu said. "Believe it or not, Izuku ended up winning the whole tournament, ringing out his classmate Mitsuki Bakugo in the final round after a long fought and very hard battle." The Japanese man, revealed to be the Midoriya patriarch, could not help but let out a bark of laughter that clearly carried amusement and sincere pride. "Wow, I bet that Inko must have gone crazy when our son won the tournament," Hisashi remarked, "and against Masaru and Mitsuki's boy, no less." Yes, Nezu began, their match was actually the only match in the entire tournament against Vulcan High that was determined by a ring out. There was also a surrender during the second round, where one of the girls from Sekijiro's homeroom class surrendered to one of the boys in Izawa's homeroom class, but other than that match and the match where Izuku defeated Katsuki, all of the matches in the tournament were determined when a competitor straight up defeated their opponent on the arena platform. Hisashi let out a smirking chuckle before saying, "I guess that goes to show that the future generation of heroes are a hell of a lot more resilient, going all out until the end." Hisashi leaned back in his seat in the booth before saying, "And Izuku, who I didn't know was such a late bloomer when it came to having a quirk, is among that determined lot. I'm rather proud of him, that son of mine." Looking around the diner that he was having breakfast in, the Midoriya patriarch said, "Oh, I should wrap this up. I have to meet up with the thieves group that I infiltrated. We're going to be discussing a heist plan that will be carried out later tonight against some local wealthy resident living over here, known as Lord Tetherby." "Don't let me keep you from your work, Hisashi," Nezu replied in a friendly and understanding tone, "and I'll inform your boss about everything that you brought to my attention. She's going to be ecstatic with how much you were able to get on the thieves group you infiltrated." "Thanks again, Nezu," Hisashi said, "and do keep an eye on my son for me, will you?" The quirked animal laughed in good nature upon hearing the Midoriya patriarch's request, a notably clear sign that he will honor said request either way, before the call between the two men ended when Hisashi ended the call on his end. Folded his cell phone, it was a flip phone, up before he slipped it back into his left front pants pocket. Right after Hisashi put his phone away, a waitress working at the diner came up to the booth that Hisashi sat at. "Excuse me, sir," the waitress said in English, "but some of the other staff here and I heard you talking a bit in some language none of us understood." Turning to face the waitress, Hisashi began to explain himself. "My apologies, ma'am," Hisashi replied perfectly in English with just a barest hint of accent in his words. "I was just talking to a colleague of mine back in Japan. I'm here in the United States on business." "Oh, you're Japanese?" the waitress remarked, sounding surprised. "If that's the case, then if you're looking for a place to have lunch at later today and you want to feel as much at home as possible, then might I recommend one of the local fusion restaurants. It's a place called Adendono Swedish-Japanese cuisine and it serves both Swedish and Japanese dishes." The waitress's suggestion piqued the Midoriya patriarch's interest. "A local place here that serves Japanese food." Nodding in confirmation, the waitress explained, "Both the Swedish and Japanese foods are as authentic as you can get without actually going to the respective countries." "Well, real Japanese food does sound like it'll make me feel more at home here," Hisashi began, "but why does the place also serve Swedish food?" "It was opened by a mixed couple," the waitress explained. "The wife is from Sweden and the husband, who sadly was killed in an accident 5 years ago, was from Japan. The wife currently runs it with the help of her employees, also the wife's children tend to pitch in from time to time, especially the older ones." With another nod, the waitress added, "Well anyway, are you ready to pay for your meal?" Hisashi nodded in the affirmative as he pulled out enough money to cover his simple breakfast, telling the waitress the difference was a tip. The waitress's eyes widened, given that Hisashi's meal was less than $5 after tax, and he paid for his meal with a $50 bill. As the waitress profusely thanked him for so generous a tip, the Midoriya patriarch nodded once in a gesture to tell the waitress that she was welcome, then without any other fanfare, he left. Hisashi walked briskly along the sidewalk, strolling past a local shopping mall, which was called Royal Woods Mall, when he nearly bumped into a group of 7 high school-age girls. "Oh, my apologies, girls," Hisashi apologized in English, "I'm just in a hurry is all." One of the girls, who had long blonde hair and, Hisashi just noticed this, a pair of lyre-shaped horns growing out of her head, as well as hooves instead of feet, looked at him with a curious look. "Are you the horned and hooved girl?" began tentatively in Japanese, "from Japan?" Surprise was clear on Hisashi's face when the girl not only spoke Japanese, but well enough for him to understand. "You're from Japan as well?" Hisashi replied, speaking in his native tongue. Gesturing to herself and her friends that she was with, the horned and hooved girl said, "My friends here and I are all from Japan. We're here in the States on a field trip. We're students attending UA High School," said a girl with ginger hair that was tied into a ponytail that hung on the one side of her head. "If you're familiar with it, then you should know that it's Japan's top school for training the next generation of heroes." With a somewhat amused look on her face, the ginger-haired girl continued, "My classmates and I who all came here on the field trip are all in UA's hero course." Pointing to the girls, Hisashi said, "Yeah, I do know about UA. In fact, my son is enrolled at your school and he's also in the hero course." Giving the girls a curious look, Hisashi asked, "Do any of you know Izuku Midoriya?" "Wait a minute." A girl with long, dark moss green hair said, a look of surprise on her face as she pointed to Hisashi, "You're Izuku's dad." "Damn right I am." The Midoriya patriarch as he took out his wallet, opened it, and pulled out a relatively recent photo that showed him with Inko and Izuku. The girls all looked at the photo before some of them began to squeal excitedly. "So Izuku does have a dad," said the ginger-haired girl. "I knew it. Monoma owes me money now." One of the girls in the group, a girl with honey brown hair and a bob style, and said girl wore a long-sleeved dress that made her look somewhat like a Victorian-era doll, took out a smartphone and, with the okay from Hisashi, took a picture of him, then a picture of the photo he pulled out. After the girls all settled down, Hisashi asked, "Say, I don't suppose you girls can tell me where I can find Izuku, could you? I'd like to catch up with my son." "Oh, Izuku isn't in our class," said a girl with long green hair that resembled thorny vines. "My classmates and I are in class 1B. Izuku is in class 1A. Snapping his fingers to convey mild disappointment, the Midoriya patriarch said, "Dang it. It would have been nice if I had a chance to talk with Izuku. Oh well." To the girls as a whole, Hisashi said, "Well, I suppose I bothered you girls enough. Can any of you tell my son that I said hello when you all get back to UA?" Giving Hisashi a playful salute, a gray-haired girl with one of her eyes obscured by her hair said, "You got it, Captain." Hisashi nodded once in thanks before he turned to walk around the girls and continued on his way. After Hisashi was gone, the ginger-haired girl said, well that was nice, but now we have to focus on what we came here to do, well Sekijiro-sensei takes care of the hotel arrangements for our class. Pointing right at Royal Woods Mall, the ginger-haired girl said, we're going to be checking out an American mall. The other girls all cheered excitedly as they followed their friend towards the mall. The Class 1B girls had a great time as they looked around Royal Woods Mall. One of the shops happened to be a souvenir store, perfect for the girls, as they were visiting the United States from Japan. Itsuka, Kinoko began nervously as she held out a men's 2XL t-shirt that said Royal Woods in big bold capital letters. Do you think that Iijiro would like this? Itsuka smiled in a comforting, reassuring manner. Itsuka, as well as all of the other Class 1B girls, were well aware that their mushroom-themed friend was very much in love with Ijiro Kirishima of Class 1A. Itsuka was further surprised that only she and the other 1B girls were aware of this, especially given how obvious the signs that Kinoko was displaying were. Momoyae Rozu and her teammates from their go in the joint training exercise from a while ago, as well as a few others who noticed, all came to the conclusion that Kinoko was, for some odd reason, actually afraid of Kirishima, with Kinoko's surrender to him in the recent tournament against Vulcan High being evidence of this belief. But no, the mushroom girl found that her heart was stolen by hardening quirk boy with spiky red hair. And Itsuka, who cared for all of the other 1B girls, wanted to do what she could to help Kinoko get Kirishima's attention. Placing her right hand on Kinoko's shoulder in a reassuring gesture, Itsuka said, I'm sure that he'll like it, Kinoko. A souvenir shirt can never go wrong, at least if you ask for my opinion. I hope so, Kinoko replied nervously, her mild stuttering a sign that simply thinking about the boy who stole her heart, even though he had no idea that he did so, made the mushroom quirk girl very nervous. Sighing, Kinoko continued as she faced the other 1B girls as a whole, sorry about being so fidgety about this, girls. It's just that I have no idea about what to do here. I mean, I'm in love with a boy. And he's from Class 1A, no less. There's nothing wrong with you being in love with one of the boys from 1A, Ryuko replied in a reassuring manner, although while we're on the subject, I think that one of the 1A boys is in love with me. Turning somewhat quickly to face Ryuko, Satsuna asked with a hint of eagerness in her tone, ooh, you stole a 1A boy's heart. Which one is it? With a mildly unsure look on her face, Ryuko replied, I think that it's Midoriya's friend Todoroki. But don't quote me on that. This may sound kind of self-absorbed of me, Pony began, but I think that Explosion Boy in Class 1 is in love with me. With a mildly unsure look on her face, the half-American girl asked her friends, I don't sound too stuck up for thinking that a boy might love me, do I? It's no problem, Pony, Itsuka reassured, and with how I saw Bakugo act during the recent tournament, as well as what I heard about him but didn't see, I can see why you'd think that he's in love with you. Looking around at her friends, Itsuka said, well girls, I see that we all got the souvenirs that we came for, so let's go meet up with the boys. They're supposed to be at some local pizza place/arcade called Gus's Games and Grub. The 1B girls all paid for the stuff they all got, then they all took their leave from Royal Woods Mall. The 1B girls met up with the 1B boys, and together, all 20 of them proceeded to make their way to the hotel that they and their teacher Sekijiro are going to be staying at while they are on the field trip in the United States. I swear, Monoma began as he and his classmates walked back to the hotel, sounding like he was about to go on another one of his conceited rants. All of the locals here must be even more full of themselves than those 1A bastards. I don't know, Monoma Kasei began, I mean, we're the foreigners here. What you may view as the locals being quote-unquote full of themselves may just be how the people here normally act. We ought to be careful not to jump to any wild conclusions. Nodding in approval, Jiroda remarked, I couldn't have stated it better myself, Kasei. Turning to regard Monoma, Jiroda said, Kasei has a point, Monoma. We ought to learn more about the local culture here. Scoffing in an indifferent tone, Monoma replied, whatever, Jiroda. But mark my words, it'll just be a waste of the conceited blonde boy was cut off when he accidentally bumped into someone, cutting off his talk mid-sentence. Boy. Exclaimed the person that Monoma bumped into in English, angrily and in an annoyed tone, watch where you're going. The person that bumped into Monoma was a fair-skinned girl that was in her late teens. She had blonde hair which was long enough so that she could bind it into twin pigtails that trailed down the back of her head. The girl wore a dark green somewhat baggy t-shirt, a pair of blue jeans, white sneakers, and, tied around her waist, a brown leather jacket that opened in the front. Additionally, she wore a red Sherpa hat with tassels hanging from the ear flaps on her head and a white cloth bandage over the bridge of her nose. She seemed to be giving off the air that she was wearing that bandage purely for aesthetic reasons. Over her back was a somewhat thin rectangle-shaped leather case that peeked out from over her right shoulder at one end and from behind her left waist at the other. Gesturing to the late teens girl, Monoma said to his classmates, see? This is what I was talking about. The locals here are so full of themselves. Eyeing Monoma with a look that had a hint of piqued interest, the late teens girl said, "I see that you speak the language that my brother Agro learned from our late father. I don't suppose that either you or any of your fellows here speaks either English or Swedish, do you? I would like to be hearing your explanation for the conceited airs that you are putting on." The way that the girl spoke made the 1B students think of large and mighty Viking warriors from a northern land of snow and cold. As such, some of them were wary of acting speaking before thinking. Similar to how the local girl was getting annoyed, Monoma likewise had a look of annoyance on his face, albeit his was mixed with a hint of smug conceitedness. "I said," Monoma said as he began to speak in English to the local girl, "that you are an example of how all of the locals that live in this town must be completely full of themselves. I mean, that would certainly go a long way to explain why you're behaving like an uncultured brainless barbarian towards me and all of my classmates here." Savage fury instantly flooded into the local girl's expression as she reached over her right shoulder, unzipped the case over her back a little, reached in, and pulled out a 4-iron golf club, as if said golf club was a sword that was sheathed in a scabbard over her back. "Do you wish for me to strike you that badly, you hysteric monkey?" The local girl snarled angrily, looking as if she was ready to attack at a moment's notice. The 1B students, upon seeing this local girl pull a blunt instrument out seemingly with the intent to attack someone with it, all went wide-eyed with alarm. Only Monoma did not react in such a manner. Instead, he merely scoffed, as if something he believed was just confirmed much to his conceited pleasure. "See," Monoma said as he gestured to the local girl, "this is exactly what I'm talking about. You and every." Monoma, before he could get one more word out, was struck in the back of his head by a chop from an oversized hand. After the conceited holler monkey fell back, Itsuka, who was the one that had disciplined Monoma just now, stepped forward as her hand returned to normal size. "I am very sorry about his act just now," Itsuka said to the local girl in English, knowing just enough of the language to convey an apology. The 1B class rep's grasp of English was about as solid as Pony's grasp of Japanese, if a comparison is needed. Bowing her head apologetically to the local girl, Itsuka continued, "I will make sure he behaves himself." The local girl eyed Itsuka with a contemplative look for a few seconds before she lowered her arm that held her 4-iron, a clear sign that her hostility has dropped. "I see that not all of you are lacking in honor," the local girl said, her tone sounding like she was appeased by the sincere apology, albeit barely. "I hope that this will not occur again." "Thank you for being so forgiving," Ibarra remarked to the local girl, also knowing English and about as much as Itsuka, being forgiving is a wise virtue to have. "Just as God forgives us for the transgressions that we make, we must be willing to forgive those who transgress against us." After she heard what Ibarra said, the local girl turned right to face her. To the worry of Ibarra and a few of the other 1B students who were close enough to see, not only was the local girl once again wearing a snarling, enraged look of savagery, but that it was actually worse than the one that she had been wearing when Monoma was pissing on her shoes. "You're a Christian, aren't you?" the local girl said, sounding more accusatory than curious. "Uh-oh," Yusetsu muttered to himself in Japanese, already having a feeling that he, as well as the rest of 1B, was not going to like where this one was going. "Yes, I am indeed Christian," Ibarra replied to the local girl in English, "is that a problem?" The local girl turned herself so that she was fully facing the devout Christian of class 1B, pointing at Ibarra with her left index finger. The local girl said, "You would force your ways and beliefs onto me? You would force me to abandon my devotion to the All-Father, abandon my warrior's honor in favor of your church's hymns." Suddenly, and to the alarm of all of 1B, they saw golden lightning emanate out of the local girl's right hand, which held the golf club's handle, only for said electrical power to go on to cover the golf club entirely, engulfing it in a shroud of golden lightning. Her snarling expression showing that she now was well beyond the point of being reasoned with, the local girl yelled, "You would shove your religion down my throat." "Oh shit." Yusetsu exclaimed at the top of his lungs in Japanese, his eyes wide with alarm as he and the rest of his classmates saw such raw, untamed power exerted right in front of them. "Guys, we need to get the hell out of here pronto." Luckily for the rest of 1B, they all agreed with their classmate with a welding quirk, especially when they saw the golden lightning that was enshrouding the local girl's golf club start to spread to cover the whole of her person. The 20 students in Sekijiro's homeroom class decided to take the time the girl was using to cover herself in her element to turn tail and run away as fast as possible. By the time that the local girl was beginning to shout angrily about how fleeing from battle was dishonorable or whatever, all of 1B had safely gotten away. Later that day, sometime late in the afternoon, Hisashi had met up with 4 other men in a hotel room somewhere in Royal Woods. One was a bald African-American man, another was a mixed Hispanic and Native American man with long black and somewhat wild hair that reached about an inch past his shoulders. The third was a Middle Eastern man with medium long black hair in a respectable style, plus the man also had a bit of a goatee going, and the final was a Caucasian man with wavy yellow blonde hair that reached the base of his skull. The Caucasian man had a notably fuller body, but aside from that, all of the group had lean yet healthy builds. Even Hisashi had a lean yet healthy body, leaving the Caucasian man as the odd duck out of the group. As a side note, all of the men in the group were around the same age. "So boss," the African American man said to the Caucasian man, "when do we carry out our heist at the Tetherby mansion?" Rubbing his hands together somewhat eagerly in anticipation, the African American man continued, "Because if what you told the rest of us is true, then this will be our biggest heist yet." The Caucasian man held up a hand in a gesture signaling for his fellow to calm down and relax a little. "We'll be moving in sometime later tonight," the Caucasian man began to explain as he lowered his hand back down. "It will be the perfect time for us to collect what our good friend Lord Tetherby owes us." The way that the Caucasian man, who is clearly the leader of the group, put things, made the rest of the group of professional thieves chuckle amongst themselves in amusement. Even Hisashi, who is truly a double agent that was working on the inside to help his true boss back in Japan bring the thieves to justice, found some humor in the Caucasian man's words. Getting the rest of the group to calm down by holding his hand up again, the Caucasian man said, "Tonight is the homecoming celebration for Royal Woods local high school, and given how this is a relatively small town, such an event will distract enough of the local populace to give the lot of us the cover we need to break into Lord Tetherby's estate and steal this." The Caucasian man then pulled out a printed sheet of paper that had a printed picture on it. The picture was of an elaborately jeweled necklace, and one that was very clearly worth a lot of money. "This, gentlemen," the Caucasian man said, "is the Tetherby family heirloom amulet made of the finest gold, masterfully cut smaller diamonds, and a large red ruby that on its own would set anyone up for life." Pushing the printed picture forward on the table that he and the other men were all seated at, the Caucasian man said, "This thing is worth roughly as much as the Hope diamond on the black market if you all want an idea how big this heist will truly be for us." Clapping his hands together, the Middle Eastern man said, "Well, alright. This really will be our biggest heist yet. We may not even have to go on heists anymore after a payoff like this." He pumped his right fist into the air as he said, "Let's hear it for our future lives on Easy Street." All of the men in the group all began to get excited for their big heist that they were going to be pulling off in a few hours. Even Hisashi looked eager for the big payoff that will occur, although it was merely a very clever act that fooled the rest of the thieves. In truth, the Midoriya patriarch was very much nervous. He only had enough info on the Caucasian man and the mixed Hispanic and Native American man to be able to have them brought in by the proper authorities, but he needed to bring in all of the thieves. Hisashi hoped that he would be able to contact his local help here in Royal Woods sometime before the heist is successfully completed, otherwise not only will the thieves get away with their biggest heist yet, but most of the thieves will get away after all is said and done. Internally sighing to himself, Hisashi steeled his nerves in preparation for his act that he had to throw on later tonight so as to avoid blowing his carefully constructed cover. Later that night, with it just having gotten dark enough to give the thieves cover, they proceeded to move towards their intended target. They drove in a dark-colored family van with tinted windows, due to the choice in using a family van as opposed to a van that would more commonly be associated with a group of thieves on the move. The thieves were able to avoid drawing any unwarranted attention as they made their way to their latest heist. As the van went on, driven by the Middle Eastern man with the Caucasian man riding shotgun, Hisashi was looking at the photo that he had previously shown to those girls from UA that were in the States on an international field trip. The Midoriya patriarch looked longingly at the photo of him with his wife and their son, yearning to return home. After his true job was done, Hisashi would have his wish, which is all the more reason why he wanted to return home with his true job being successfully completed. He feared that he would return to Inko and Izuku in shame. The mixed race, Hispanic and Native American, man, who sat next to Hisashi on his right, saw that the Asian man in the group was looking at a photo. Out of curiosity, the mixed race man leaned slightly to see what was in the photo. "That a new photo of you with your wife and kid, man?" the mixed race man asked, getting Hisashi's attention while pointing to the photo in the Midoriya patriarch's hands. Turning his head to regard the mixed race fellow, Hisashi replied, "Yeah. This was taken right after our last job, but before we all started the job we're working on right now." Looking at the photo a bit closely, the mixed race man said after noticing something, "Your wife looks like she's gained some weight since the previous photo that you took with her and your kid." With a bit of a self-amused smirk, Hisashi replied, "Well, it doesn't exactly bother me. In fact, if I'm to be honest, I'm actually kind of liking how my wife's weight makes her look." "Oh?" the African-American man remarked with a hint of amusement in his tone, having heard the conversation thus far, "So you like having a fat wife?" Nodding once in the affirmative, Hisashi replied, "Because she has a fat ass to go with it." That got a few barks of laughter from the thieves, and the African-American and the mixed-race men both said words along the lines of Hisashi having the right taste in women. The Midoriya patriarch wasn't even acting for the sake of his mission, he was sincerely fond of how Inko now has a fuller body. He didn't know about Inko's weight gain until after he returned from the job that he was on before the one that he was on now and wouldn't mind it if she were to gain a few more pounds. Then do a little private show for him in their bedroom. Putting the photo of him with his family away, Hisashi said, well, we can reminisce about our families back home later. Right now, we have a job to do. And your timing in saying that is spot on, the Caucasian man said as the van they were all in slowly came to a stop. We just arrived at Shea Tetherby. The thieves and Hisashi looked out of the tinted windows of the family van they were in as they looked over at the Tetherby estate, a large and grandiose mansion that was very clearly the home of a wealthy elite. Clapping his hands together, the Caucasian man said, all right, gentlemen, we have a heist to carry out. Let's get going. The men quickly gathered up what little gear they were going to bring in with them before they got out of the van and, with no one around to see, made their way to the home that they were going to rob blind. Hisashi and the thieves made their way into the Tetherby estate via a side door in a garage. It seems that there's a lack of security here at the Tetherby estate, the African-American man noted, his tone more of piqued curiosity rather than anything else. Still, we ought to be careful. There's no telling what may. Who the hell are you guys? A much younger but still clearly adult voice called out to the group, startling all of them and making them look over. When they did, they spotted a young adult man that looked to be in his very early 20s. He had fair skin, orangish hair that stuck up like broom bristles, and there were yellow markings of some sort all over his face. The young adult man was, to the surprise of the group, very clearly in the middle of trying to steal a white limo that was in the garage. Who the hell are you? The Caucasian man replied, more curious than rattled that he and his group were apparently just caught by someone who seemed to also be here to steal something from the Tetherby estate. I ask you first, the young adult man replied. Not wanting to do a back and forth with who was clearly a fellow thief, the Caucasian man explained, my associates here and I are here to steal the Tetherby family heirloom amulet from Lord Tetherby's personal collection. Gesturing to the white limo that he was trying to carjack, the young adult man explained, I'm here to steal the fat sack of crap's limo. Turning his head to look from left to right as if he was worried about a third party coming in to bust everyone in the garage, the young adult man turned his attention back to the thieves and said, I won't tell if you guys don't tell. Deal? The Caucasian man replied as the thieves and Hisashi made their way into the estate, leaving the surprise limo thief to do his work without bother. After a few minutes of searching, the thieves and Hisashi finally located a room in the estate that had a safe located inside. It was a moderately advanced safe, under 5 years old if you have to know, but still no match for the mixed-race man who, to Hisashi's surprise, had a quirk that allowed him to effortlessly undo and open any lock. That's all the quirk did, though. Within a few brief moments, the safe was opened, showing all of the marvelous wealth and other such treasures that were located within. Among all of the valuables that were found within the safe was the Tetherby family heirloom amulet. As the men proceeded to scoop in the lot of the safe's wealth into duffel bags, with the amulet going into a special leather money bag that zipped closed, the Caucasian man said as he clapped his hands together, well done, gentlemen. This is without a doubt our biggest heist yet. Hey, can we hurry this up? The Middle Eastern man asked over at the door that led into the room that they were all in, clearly acting as a lookout, the sooner we get out of here the better. I don't want to get caught mid-heist. Nodding in understanding, the Caucasian man said, very well. We got what all we came here for, so there really is no further point. The Caucasian man was cut off when the African-American man, in his haste to help clean up, slammed the safe's door back up so hard that it made a loud, resounding noise that prompted voices in the distance located within the estate to begin shouting, clearly sounding both like they were just waking up and that they were alarmed. And now we run, the Caucasian man said, a hint of dryness in his tone, as he, the other thieves and Hisashi, all proceeded to scramble out of the Tetherby estate. The thieves and Hisashi made it about halfway to the garage, which was their point of exit, when they were spotted by a butler that served at the estate. When said butler tried to confront the group, Hisashi, in his effort to maintain his cover, used his quirk to breathe fire into the butler's face, making the butler flail back as he scrambled to wipe the flames from his face. Whoa. The mixed-race man practically exclaimed in wonder and amazement to Hisashi as they and the rest of the group continued to run to the garage. You never mentioned that you have a quirk, man. You never mentioned that you have a quirk, the Midoriya patriarch replied dryly when he and the thieves made it to the garage. The 5 of them quickly ran out a door on the one side wall of the garage, which let them leave the estate and run right across a large, stately lawn and over to the sidewalk outside of the estate. The thieves and Hisashi all piled into their getaway van before they sped off with all due haste. The hasty escape from Lord Tetherby's estate was not exactly the best in the group's collective history. This wasn't the first heist that Hisashi went on with the thieves group he infiltrated, but they were still able to get away nonetheless. And they had everything that was in the safe that they located, including the Tetherby family heirloom amulet. Well, despite the fact that we got what we came for, gentlemen, the Caucasian man began, I believe that it would be wise for the lot of us to lie low for a bit. Nodding in agreement, the mixed race man remarked, well, that goes without saying, boss. We always have to lie low for a bit whenever we're caught breaking. Boom. The mixed race man was cut off when he, as well as everyone else in the van, cried out in alarm when the van was hit by a wave of what felt like earth, probably large amounts of dirt, with a few small rocks inside of said dirt. Hisashi and the thieves felt as if their getaway vehicle was just slammed in the side by an avalanche of dirt, rock, and similar earthen material. What's more is that not only did that avalanche came out of seemingly nowhere, they were driving on a street going through a residential area that was nowhere near the mountains, but that it hit the van with enough force to push it back until the other side slammed into a tree in someone's front yard. After the van finally came to a stop, the men inside all groaned in stiffened pain as they heard a teenage girl's voice shout from outside, "Come out of the van right now, you thieves. I will not warn you again." Still shaken by the wild ride that they were just thrown through, Hisashi and the thieves climbed out of the now totaled van and, once they were all standing outside, they saw who it was that was confronting them. It was indeed a teenage girl, one who looked to be 15 years of age. She had a sort of grayish pale skin and pitch black hair whose bangs covered her left eye, allowing her right eye, which was a piercing shade of burgundy, to see unhindered. The rest of the girl's hair was long enough so that it trailed halfway down her back in a single braided ponytail. She wore a black sleeveless girl's blouse, a black skirt that reached her knees, black and white striped arm warmers that reached halfway up her upper arms, black and white striped stockings, and black shoes. The girl was also holding onto a wooden staff which, judging by its design and detailing, must have been of Native American make. Even though the teenage girl was standing with two police officers, thus Hisashi and the thieves still outnumbered them, the men were still very much worried about the teen girl, especially since she was currently enshrouded in a cloak of a powdery-looking dirt that was radiating a bright, shining, brilliant golden aura. The teenage girl raised her left hand, her staff was in her right, causing the massive wave of dirt that was thrown all around earlier to rise, as it was enshrouded by that same golden aura. All of the excess dirt that was thrown around was pooling together in a single spot at the teenage girl's command, and as that was going on, the girl herself pointed her staff at Hisashi and the thieves. "I thought that tonight would be a night off for me," the teen girl began. "I would get to relax at home, looking after my younger siblings, while Allison, Agro and their group all went to homecoming at Royal Woods High. But no. No, I was brought in to help capture and subdue a group of thieves reported to have broken into the Tetherby estate, raided one of the safes inside, then make a getaway." When the girl was finished with the first part of her tangent, the dirt that she was controlling had finished coming together and began to form into a large cage. It was box-shaped, and the solid dirt bars made it resemble the kind of cages that criminals in old-timey cartoons would be thrown into when they were at last captured by the good guys in those early Saturday morning cartoon escapades of old. Giving Hisashi and the thieves a cold glare, the teen girl said, "Now then. Will you men all surrender peacefully, or do the police and I have to take you all in by force?" "What the hell kind of a quirk does this girl have?" the mixed-race man exclaimed in alarm and fear as he and the rest of the group began to freak out upon seeing the teen girl's earth manipulation quirk in action. Knowing full well that they were all in no position to flee, Hisashi and the thieves decided to fight back. The teen girl, as bullets from guns two of the thieves were firing at her, were blocked perfectly by her gold-enshrouded earth cloak, manipulated some leftover earth from her previous assault on the getaway van to rise up and slam into all of them, except for Hisashi and the mixed-race thief, as they were standing behind the other three, as all three of them ran to find some cover. Even more so since the two police officers, seeing some of the thieves pull guns out, proceeded to pull their own firearms out. "This is bad, guys," the mixed heritage man shouted as he and the others ran to hide behind the ruined remains of their getaway van. "We've been caught with our pants down by two police officers and a girl with a killer earth manip. The mixed heritage man was cut off when he got hit by one of the shots fired by the first police officer, who was a Hispanic woman. With a pained grunt, the mixed heritage man fell back and laid on the ground on his back in someone's front yard. He yelled all sorts of swears as he clutched his left shoulder, in which the bullet that hit him was lodged. "Oh, shit," Hisashi exclaimed as he and the others saw their fellow get hit by the policewoman and fall over. The shoulder wound was going to need some medical attention as soon as possible because the mixed heritage man could bleed out, but the shot on its own wasn't an instant death sentence. With a worried look on his face, the Midoriya patriarch realized that he had no choice in this situation. Doing something he thought that he would never do, it was also something that he never wanted to do. Hisashi reached to the holster on his right hip that held a handgun that he was provided with by the thieves group that he had infiltrated. Due to his strong aversion to using firearms, stemming partly from some of the stigma that the use of such weapons faces in Japan, Hisashi had never so much as taken the gun out of the holster, only carrying it because the thieves in the group he infiltrated would otherwise find him odd, thus it would have run the risk of blowing his carefully constructed cover. But now, given that he and the group of thieves had their backs to the wall because of two local police officers and a local quirked girl, and the fact that said opposition was too far out of range for his fire breath quirk to hit them, plus the mixed heritage man was just incapacitated because he took a shot to his shoulder, Hisashi was finding himself glad to actually have a gun on hand. He was also a bit disgusted to be glad to have a gun, but that's not here and now. Hisashi pulled out his gun, a Sig Sauer 9mm, took aim at the teen girl in the gold aura enshrouded earth cloak, and fired 3 shots at her. The cloak effortlessly blocked all 3 of Hisashi's shots, just as it had done when other shots were taken at the teen girl. Damn it, this is really bad, Hisashi thought worriedly. This thieves group that I'm trying to collect info on just had to be caught up in a shootout with local law enforcement. I swear, the boss lady is going to be really mad that things had gone as far south here as they. The Midoriya patriarch's thoughts were interrupted when the second police officer, a man who like Hisashi was also Asian, the Asian police officer was Korean, though, fired 3 shots at him, hitting him in the gut, right shoulder and chest. Herc. Hisashi grunted out in pain as he fell back due to being shot in so many places on his person, laying on the ground in that front yard, same as the mixed heritage man. However, whereas the mixed heritage man's odds looked fairly good as he was only hit in the shoulder, the same can't be said for Hisashi, sadly enough. As he laid there on the ground, bleeding onto the front lawn of some random residence in Michigan, Hisashi could feel himself slip into the void. So Hisashi thought somberly as he could feel his pull on life weaken, this is it, huh? It looks like I won't be returning from a successful job after all. Sorry about this Inko, Izuku with his last thoughts being of his hero in training of a son and his generously sized wife whose rear he wished he could have squeezed one last time, Hisashi slipped into the void. The following morning over at Royal Woods Hotel, the Class 1B students were all sitting around in the hotel rooms that they were using while on their field trip. Ibara looked particularly worried, as she had been informed by 1B's teacher Sekijiro that because of her, there was a very good chance that UA may have to deal with trying to defuse an international incident. The only saving graces that the devout Christian had was that in her defense, she had no idea that her showing her faith would have elicited such a reaction from the local girl, and that the local girl, with all due respect, did overreact rather badly. At least the 20 students in 1B all got away without getting hurt. That girl's lightning quirk looked like it could have powered through all of my vines, as if it was nothing, Ibara said in a mildly rattled tone, as she sat in the hotel room where all of the 1B girls were staying. That golden aura of her lightning was truly terrifying to behold. I was scared, Kinoko squeaked, trembling a bit as she thought back to the incident in question. I had no idea that there were such powerful quirks outside of Japan. Satsuna made a comment on how she wasn't even aware that there were any sort of quirks outside of Japan at all. But that was quickly shut down by most of the other girls, with Yui pointing out to Satsuna how quirks were a worldwide phenomena. The 1B girls all heard a pair of hands clap together, prompting all of them to turn to face Itsuka, who was the one that made the clapping sound. Sighing in a resigned tone, Itsuka said, "Girls, I think that the point here is that there are simply some things out there that we just cannot wrap our heads around, things that go well beyond the pale of what we can expect." The other girls all nodded in agreement with their class rep before some of them flumped over onto the beds in the hotel room that they were all sitting in. Later that morning during an early lunch, as the 1B girls ate, Pony was reading something in a newspaper that she had gotten a hold of. "Hey girls," the half-American girl began, "it says here that there was a group consisting of 5 thieves that broke into a wealthy guy's estate last night at the same time the local high school was having some sort of homecoming event." Lowering the newspaper, Pony continued, "It mentions that a local girl, who has a rather powerful earth manipulation quirk, helped some local police officers capture 2 of the thieves alive, but the other 3 were killed by the police officers in a shootout." Looking back to her newspaper, Pony continued, "The police are doing an investigation into the incident to determine if the 2 officers in question acted with due cause or not." The article also noted that the quirk teen girl was praised for her assistance and the fact that she didn't kill any of thieves. "Figures the locals here also have quirks, just like everyone we know over at UA," Ryuko said, "and damn powerful ones, at that." Leaning back in her seat, Itsuka said, "Geez, imagine what the recent tournament against Vulcan High would have been like if one of the students that was in the tournament had a crazy powerful quirk like what that Viking-like girl had. Or that girl who helped the police in stopping the thief group from that newspaper article last night." The other 1B girls all commented in agreement with Itsuka. Ryuko even let out a bit of a laugh at the sheer ridiculousness of it all. Sure, the 1B girls, the boys in their class, and everyone else that they all knew all back at home were used to the ridiculous on the regular basis. But that did nothing to prepare Class 1B for what they would be encountering once they entered the United States on their little field trip, did nothing to prepare any of them for how truly big the world at large is out there. As she finished off a can of soda, Ryuko would not help but wonder what other kinds of insanity are out there in the world. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this